Hello and welcome to the Untethered Consciousness channel. I'm your host, Rod Bland, like it is every week. It is 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning here in Sydney in Australia. If you're tuning in from the United States, it's going to be somewhere between, I think, 4 and 7 for you. If you're in the UK, it's getting a little bit late at night. However, it doesn't really matter. We're all here together. If you are just tuning in, let us know where you're from. Drop a comment in the chat. And I'll give you a shout out a little bit later on. Now today I'm very excited because I've got a guest in today's live stream who was recently interviewed on my channel, Vincent Ollivier, or the proper pronunciation is Vincent, I think. Anyway, I'm going to bring Vincent in, and he's got a couple of things that have just recently occurred which we'll be able to talk about, and we'll take any questions from the audience as well. So here we go. How are you, Vincent?
Hi, Rod. Very well, thank you. It's 11 p.m. here in France, but usually
11 p.m. Oh, that's commitment. I forgot. I think you're an early riser too, aren't you? So you've really stayed up late for this one.
Yeah, I'm usually asleep at that time, and I like to wake up early and enjoy the quietness of the morning. I do have a client pitch to do tomorrow morning as well for my consulting business. That's going to be fun, but don't worry, I'm going to be okay. Happy to be here and for this live stream with you guys.
All right. Well, it's good to have you here. Now, I'll just do a quick shout out to Ravon0277 who's driving in the car, but thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you being here with us today. And I think this was probably pronounced Jana. I think. I haven't seen you in here before, Jana, but welcome. And you're tuning in from Texas. Nice to see you here. So, Vincent, you were telling me in an email, I deliberately didn't ask you about this because I wanted to hear the story for the first time now. You've recently had an experience that I'm sure people would like to hear about. So I'm not going to give anything away. How about you tell us what's happened?
No problem. Maybe to give a bit of context and background to everyone tuning in or listening. When you interviewed me, I went through the near-death experience I had, which was very brief, but I saw 4 beings during that experience. I just could not remember or see their face during the time of the NDE. But I knew that I knew them, and I knew that they felt more family to me than even my own family in this lifetime. And I've always wondered, who those people were. And you did ask me a few more questions about, what they felt like, and I said they were sort of being lined up, and the one more to what would be my right felt to be more feminine and a bit more of a stronger connection, almost family connection. And the other 3, 2 of them same size, maybe the 4th one a bit more in the background. That's all I could really take from the NDE. And the NDE happened in January 2018, so it's been almost 6 years now. And out of the blue, about 10 days ago, it was the night of the 11th of November. So I don't know if it had anything to do with the 11/11 portal, although I'm not necessarily.
Surely, 11/11, yeah.
I know. I've had I'm quite a lucid dreamer, so I'm very conscious that I'm dreaming. But I'm also, I wouldn't necessarily label it as OBE because I'm not conscious that I'm leaving my body. But I'm very conscious that I find myself in different places. And in those places, basically, I'm aware that I am in that place, conscious of being in that place. And that my physical human body is asleep. I know exactly in which position it is asleep, how it is breathing, and so on. And I'm also very aware of the vibration of the place I'm in, which is very different from the moment I wake up where I'm like, wow, that's so noisy on Earth. And there's so much like jerky vibrations everywhere, whereas in those different places it's always very calm. So that was just to give a bit of context to the dream that happened about 10 days ago, and during which, yes, I'm going to just break the news, I made with the 4 beings that I saw waiting for me within the light during the NDE. And maybe you want just to again give you a bit of context. I'm standing in that dream. It's like I've just arrived in the middle of a small village that very much resembles a village in the Cotswolds in England. If you've ever been to that part of England, there are lots of small villages stone properties, black roofs, very nice. Some villages. The village is absolutely empty. There's not even a car. There's no one around. I'm standing and I'm smiling because I know that I'm about to surprise a lot of people. Why? How? Again, I've got absolutely no clue, but there I am. Temperature, it's not warm, it's not cold. The sky is slightly overcast. England maybe, but I'm just waiting for what seems to be like a good solid minute, and then I hear a voice to my left. So I turn around, and there's a woman that comes and she says, "Is that you, Vincent?" And I just smile as a reply to her, and she just runs towards me and she gives me like a big hug, and I'm hugging that lady. She's blonde with curly hair, and she's dressed quite modernly as well, like, a pair of jeans and a white top. And everything in that dream feels very real because, like, as I'm hugging her, I'm feeling everything as if I were to hug a normal person in this life. And she says to me, like, wow, like, it's so good to see you. Like, almost, what are you doing here? And she holds my hand at that moment, and again, the sensation feels very real of holding hand. I mean, it's not like in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, more like in, you haven't seen someone in a while, you almost want to touch them to feel they're real. And another voice from the same place comes around, and another woman comes in and she says, like, "Is Vincent here?" And the first woman just waves and says, yes, that's him, just come along. And same thing, she gives me a hug and she's overjoyed to see me. And the bizarre thing at that moment is I'm very happy to see them. I'm still really not making the connection consciously with them. A third woman comes from more of my right this time. And this time she's got dark hair. She's wearing like a dark red hoodie, pair of jeans, white trainers as well. And she says to me, she smiles at me and she recognizes me instantly. And she says, like, "Wow, Vincent, so good to see you. It's like, we haven't seen you in such a long time." And for some reason, I replied to her very naturally, "Well, I was there in April, but you guys were just not around, so the village was empty." And she smiles back and says, "Well, we were busy with some other projects or something like that, so that's normal. You could not see us at that time." But same thing, she gives me a hug and she keeps her hand on my lower back, and I do the same once we have a chat. And then she takes a step back, and I remember just looking at them three. And at that moment, there is that very strange connection that, again, I know that I know you, and I'm really taking the time to take in all their features, their physical traits, and the energy I feel from each of them. And I really feel like a really strong bond and connection with the woman on my right, standing on my right, to my right. And again, to give you a bit of context, they're all like in their late 20s, early to mid 30s, which very much sounds like the spirit world when everyone is young or staying at quite a young age, at least in the way they want to display themselves. And what's frustrating at that moment is I really have the connection, and I can tell the relationship I've got with them, all the history we've had together, and the fact that, yes, we are a family in some sort. And yet, as I'm speaking to you, I just cannot put words on that vibration or energy exchange we had. Anyway, more villagers come in because the word spread that I was around. And I have no particular memory of these people except for one person, a very tall guy. So if I'm 6'4", and in that reality I'm still appearing as 6'4", that guy is about 6'8", 6'9", extremely tall. And he doesn't hug me particularly, but he just sort of says like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And we have this conversation, very brief, like, catching up, like, "Where have you been?" I joke with him because he's got quite a bushy beard, and I'm like, "You should trim it, I could give you advice on how to do so." But I do recognize that we've gone through a lot together, like a lot of adventures or a lot of lifetimes. I'm not too sure. They show me around the village very briefly, and at some point I sort of get bored of the situation, and I said to them, well, listen, I've got to go, I've got places to be as well. So it was really nice to see you. I promise I'll come back. But, until next time, see you guys. And I go through the dreams during the night, but when I wake up, of course, that is the first dream that comes back to my mind. And the connection with the tall guy comes back instantly. I've had several dreams during which it was the end of the world, so to speak. So there would be like a natural cataclysm or catastrophe. One dream in particular, sea levels were about to rise. And we're trying to tell with that person, with that man, as many people as we possibly can, but no one's really listening to us. So we find a high point with a small group of people who are willing to listen. And of course, we see the sea rising instantly, like completely swarming every habitation and so on. And with this small group, we escape. And once the storm, so to speak, has passed, we go and we see if we can find survivors everywhere. And we sort of reconstruct and rebuild from there. And I remember being with that man and with other people. But the image that came back as well in the morning was the overlay with the beings waiting for me in the light, because there were maybe, I don't know, a good 20, 25 people in that village. I could only remember 4 of them very specifically, and feeling a very strong bond with 3 of them. And especially the woman with dark hair, the other 2 blonde women, and that tall man. And then it hit me that they presented themselves in the exact same position that they were during the near-death experience. And that the connection we had at that moment was actually, yes, it is very possible that these were the people or the beings waiting for me in the NDE. Now, what is extremely frustrating is I would love to tell you all the stories and the relationship, the exact relationship I have with those people. But again, words are failing to really express what I went through. And the sort of just energetic connection where everything was told without even speaking or talking to each other. So that's the experience I've had. And I think, jokingly, that perhaps the description I gave of those 4 beings when you interviewed me was not as accurate as they would like it to be. So they decided that before Vincent goes back to the live stream, we need to appear so he can actually share how we actually look like.
Yeah, because they were just faceless kind of light beings, weren't they? Yeah.
Just the silhouettes, like dark silhouettes, and impossible to get more than just a shape, basically. And I could not see the face. I could just have an energetic during the NDE, that sensation that although I could not see them, I knew them from a very long time ago. So after the dream, I was quite elated. I like a lot of joy and a lot of love with me in the morning. And during the day, strangely, thinking back about that specific dream, was starting to feel very sad, as if a piece of myself was actually missing somewhere. And that feeling of sadness continued for just, a couple of days after that. But it was really feeling that, I was happy I was seeing those people and I spent time with them, but I was also very sad that I was not with them right now at the minute, if that makes sense.
So it sounds like you know them and that you knew them and that they're somehow related, like a kind of a soul group. I guess I've heard that term used before. But the specific memories of what you did with those people is still eludes you, does it?
Exactly. That's very correct.
Yeah.
Aside from that dream where that's the end of one reality, where sea levels are rising, that's the only exact memory I would have of. But that's only the tall man I see. I don't remember the woman, for example. So it's a bit frustrating to have this kind of confirmation, but only half a confirmation. Because if you, there's a part of me that really, really wants to know deep down. But in a way, I'm probably will get the answers as life continues.
Yeah, it's quite common in dreams, isn't it? I can think of many dreams where I've definitely where there's been people there, and I felt like I knew them. That are very familiar. They weren't strangers, but they're not people that I know from this life. I think that happens a lot, and when you have a bunch of them together like that, and now it's the second time, the same people, same beings. Yeah, I can understand why there would be a bit of sadness there, because I think when you make that sort of level of connection with people, you want to be around them more, and they're at a definite vibration that kind of brings you up as well.
Mm-mm. It's what was striking about the dream is the arrival. I had no idea how I got there, but I was standing there in the middle of that street, and I was knowing that people were not expecting me. And actually, that was the case. Everyone seems to be quite surprised by my presence. I also knew that it was temporary, so I could just almost pop in, say hi, but I couldn't stay. So that's what made it really bizarre. The exact same night, my better half also had a very strange dream, and for her it was more akin to an out-of-body experience, because she told me that she felt herself leaving her body, getting out of our property, literally, like by the wall, finding herself flying outside. And she said she met with one of her spirit guides, who told her that he was a new spirit guide for her that had recently arrived. But also, she said, in the exact same fashion, she saw a group of people, and she said, for some reason, I went towards one of them, and I just gave him like a fist bump. I said, I could not tell who they were. I just knew that I knew them, and they were almost surprised to see me smiling. And one of them, I just could not resist the idea of just going and giving me like a quick fist bump, and he did the exact same thing, smile. And the other two around that guy were just a bit surprised, like, what are you doing? So it seemed like during that night, at least where we were, there was an energy field or something that allowed us to get a bit more access to either spirit guides or the other side temporary or something like that. Quite an intense process, I would say, but a confirmation as well when we had that conversation in the morning that we both had dreams that in a way were about the same thing.
Yeah, I guess the veil thins a little bit at certain times, certain parts of the year, phases of the moon, as far as the planets and other things go. I'm sure that's the case.
And apparently
That
the
sounds like
veil
that's
is
one.
the veil is thinning anyway since was it March or April 2023 of this year? So it seems like as the years will go by, we will get more and more access to the other side more naturally.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. Was there anything in particular that you did different as far as how you went to sleep? I don't know what sort of ritual you have that might explain why
Not
that
part-
event actually occurred.
Not particularly. I try to, ever since I listened to your interview of Darius J. Wright about OBEs, this interview reminded me that I had OBEs when I was younger, when I was a teenager, but I was not really understanding those were OBEs. So I've been trying, like, for the past month, sometimes if I'm not too tired before I go to sleep, to just say, well, I'd like to experience what is having an OBE. But generally, I fall asleep pretty fast, and I don't remember falling asleep. Whereas a few years ago, I would remember every stage of falling asleep. And so for some reason, this has changed. The process is very instantaneous, and I just find myself in dreamscape and living dreams, some of them more consciously than others. So nothing in particular, at least that I can remember with regards to that particular evening.
So I think you mentioned when we had our interview that you often have lucid dreams. And for those who perhaps aren't familiar with what they are, or can you explain, what that is for you, what a lucid dream looks like for you, and whether there's anything in particular that you do to bring those on before you go to sleep?
I think you're very on point to say what they feel for me, because a lucid dream for Vincent might be very different to a lucid dream from Rod or from anyone listening, and that's why I don't like to put stickers or mentions on different experiences when someone might experience astral travel or be in one way, another person in a different way. So for me, I have two types of lucid dreams. The first type would be a dream in which all of a sudden I'm realizing that I'm dreaming. And for example, you see the shelf behind me, I would say, I don't like that, I want to change the background. And all of a sudden that would disappear. And I would say I would have to think about what I want to replace it with. And if I say I want a different shelf or I want like a frame or a mirror, it would appear instantly. And I can change the surroundings to the point where I can completely change the environment. If I want the sky to be pink, the sky will be pink. So it's just, I've woken up my cat, might be grumpy. Or if I want to be on a desert island, I'll be on a desert island. So this is one type of lucid dreams where I can change parameters at will. They don't happen this often. I think it was more at the beginning when I was a teenager, understanding lucid dreams. The other type of lucid dream that I would have those days would be very much, sorry. All right.
That's all right. Everyone wants to see the cat now.
Yeah. Do you want to say hi quickly?
Sure. I like cats.
There you are.
Oh, there's a black cat too. Awesome.
Yeah.
My
He's,
wife April had one just like that. It looks like he's Burmese.
I don't know. We had him. He's grumpy now. He's an old cat we rescued a couple of months ago from the local shelter, and
Right.
he's 13 years old. And apparently, for
Wow.
some reason, in France, there still is a bit of superstition around black cats, and people don't want to adopt them. Whereas I'm like, I don't care. A cat is a cat. So but usually, yeah, he's probably wondering what I'm doing right now. Anyway, his name is Zenith, or Zenith in English.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So where was I? I got lost now.
We were talking about lucid dreams and what they're particularly like for you, so you can recreate things or change things in your lucid dreams. But the other part of my question was whether you do anything in particular to make those occur.
At the beginning, I used to think very consciously, I would like to experience a lucid dream this night. And sometimes it would happen, sometimes it would not happen. The first step to realize also you're in a lucid dream is to be conscious that you're dreaming. And if it is something you have not done before, it takes a bit of practice, because most of the time dream seems to be unfolding without much control on your part. But the moment you realize that actually I'm in a dream, you almost need to slow it down a bit. And that's when you can, at least for me, that's when I'm like, okay, what am I looking at? And can I change that or not? And if it changes, I know that that's it. I'm starting to take control of the dream. For me, there's a degree of excitement when that happens that could wake me up, because I get like overjoyed by the idea, I can change this, I can change that. So that's type 1 of lucid dreams. The other lucid dreams would be more of I find myself in an environment and everything feels very real in that environment. So say, if I'm going through a door and for some reason like there's aircon blasting, I would feel the cold on my face. So I would feel everything as in this reality. But sometimes I would also be very aware that things are not what they seem. And by that I mean, I would see a plane, but instead of flying in the sky, the plane would just basically move horizontally and land on water. And I'd be thinking, I'm sure that's my brain manufacturing this as a plane, because that's the only thing it knows or can, rationally explain. But I'm sure it's not a plane. And of course, you would have several planes doing that, and I would try to investigate it. But for me, at least, there still is a degree of the brain trying to overlay reality on top of what I'm seeing. And one dream I had, which was really strange, which I've included in the novel because it was a fun one, is I step into an elevator and I see myself as not human. So I'm looking at a reflection of an alien being that has got like green skin, that's got very square face, is very bulky. And the first thing I think is I take a couple of steps back, and I almost panic and almost wake up at the vision because it was like really startling. Yet, as I sort of calm down and go back into the dream, I really go towards the mirror and start touching my face, and the mirror is reflecting every one of my action. I'm thinking, well, this must be technology, like actually it's just a technology that is mirroring my human body, but is actually projecting the image of an alien. So I look down on my hands, and I'm not looking at my human hands. I'm looking at foreign hands. And that's the point I realized that actually I'm embodying whatever type of, alien race that is. And I'm starting to actually laugh at the mirror because I'm thinking that is so cool. The problem with that specific dream is that someone came in and told me that I wasn't supposed to be there. So they had to take me out, and we started to have a big fight in the elevator because they didn't want them to take me out. But again, the fight felt very real. I had to go and say, how am I fighting that big guy who's suddenly like trying to choke me so that I get unconscious. I don't want that to happen. So this is the kind of dreams that get to a lucid stage where there's a lot of my human brain that comes into play and tries to analyze things and tries to be more embedded into the dream and interact with the dream, as opposed to a normal dream where it feels like things are just happening without any degree of control.
Yeah, that's. I think there's definitely a distinction between lucid and dreaming, and for the lucid dreams that I've had, it's to do with how it actually feels. So the first step for me is like what you had, where you focus in on a particular, like I usually would focus on the ground or on my hands to. Well, actually, the step before that is realizing that you're dreaming. That's the hard part that I've found, is that most of the time you're just in a dream, you wake up, you go, oh, yeah, that was a dream. And then every now and again, it's like something happens and you go, oh, I'm actually dreaming. And then that's the access. But it's not one that I can like generate on demand. It's just kind of like, it's something that I wanted to do before I went to sleep. And then sometimes it just happens, sometimes it doesn't. But I've not been able to control anything. It's like I can get to the point where it's lucid, and now, yes, I've got full waking consciousness, what to me feels like full waking consciousness. And I can decide where I want to go, but I haven't got to the stage where I can change things. And I've never even thought about actually changing anything. It seems like the actual environment kind of changes around me willy-nilly. And maybe that's just part of not being used to being in a realm where whatever you think happens straight away. And I don't think that we're conscious. We're not really conscious of every single thought that we have here, and it doesn't really have the same impact in our physical reality. But it's a different thing in like the astral realm. It's where whatever you think actually goes on. It is fun. I can't wait for the next one. I'm always looking forward to when I go to sleep. I wonder if I have an astral dream tonight.
Have you ever dreamt that you could fly, for example?
A lot, yeah. I think I had a lot of OBEs when I was a kid. So prior to being age 10, and I can specifically remember I had a lot of them where I'd be falling and dump back into my body, and sleep paralysis, wake up in sleep paralysis and can't move for another minute. And I think that sensation of falling is just, I think, brain's interpretation of you coming back, to your physical body. But I can remember a couple where, because I lived on a farm in the bush in Western Australia, and just flying around, out of the house and then flying around the farm fields and zooming around. It was like such great fun. I remember doing that a couple of times, and now when I look back, I go, I'm pretty sure that was some astral traveling going on there.
Quite certainly, yeah. I've had the flying sensation in some dreams as well, where again I realize that I'm dreaming and I'm deciding that, well, why not try to fly? And I can just take off, or I can just jump off a building and I would be flying. But it's bizarre because in those moments I'm just thinking, well, worst case scenario, I just fall and I squash myself to death. That's fine. So it's something that just like unplugs completely from the brain and just says, don't worry, it won't happen. So, but yeah, my advice would be, at least that's the method I used, was to really focus every evening. I would like to experience a lucid dream.
Yeah.
The first time it took me 3 days to have a lucid dream. Then it took me another 2 weeks where I had no lucid dreams whatsoever. It's about being a bit like disciplined. They may not happen. I have no clue if it's because sometimes we're tired or sometimes we have a lot to process about the day first. Some nights you might just not remember dreams because you're too tired to remember them. But after a while, yeah, they may happen. Once you realize you're in the dream, I think, as you say, it's starting to play with possibilities. And maybe next time for you as well, say, let's try to change one thing and see what happens.
Yeah. It's cool. I think it was one of the books by Bruce Moen. I'm pretty sure Bruce Moen, who's a graduate of the Monroe Institute, and he wrote a book where he was in one of his out of body experiences. So he would access these experiences usually through meditation, and he met this woman who had a house, and she was showing him how she could manifest things, like just create them in her hand. So she created like a coffee cup, and then she added a saucer for it, and then she put tea in it, and this is all sort of happened in front of him. And she said, now you try it. And so, and he tried the same thing, and he created a coffee cup, but the handle was kind of wonky, and when he put the tea in it, then it kind of ran out the sides because there was holes in the bottom of it. And, it takes practice to be able to do those sorts of things. So I've got a question here actually from Ravon0277, who I hope is not still driving. Just wanting to know whether do you wake up in the middle of the night with your head or body shaking? That happens to her as well. I've also woken up and it feels like rocking. Yeah, do you ever have any experiences like that?
Not when I wake up, but sometimes when I fall asleep. I've had the sensations I can be laying on my back and that the mattress just opens and I'm falling like in an endless pit. Right. And I would have that sensation that I welcome. I know my wife always says that's crazy. Why do you let it happen? And I just enjoy it. Like it feels like I'm literally falling into the depth of whatever, and then I would fall asleep. No, generally I wake up and I would have, especially in this day and age, I feel like I'm coming back from so far away that I find it quite difficult to reintegrate the physical body. So it's more like my body actually doesn't move. And I really need, it takes some concerted effort to just say, hey, you just wake up, like you're back to earth, you're back to being Vincent, you're back to living your life. So I don't have that sensation of head or body vibration. Never happened to me. I'm trying to think. It's more when I'm falling asleep that I could have sensations, but not when I wake up.
Yeah, I think that's an access. That particular state is when you wake up is access to an OBE for a lot of people. And that's my one successful OBE was in that particular state. So I woke up. I remember later on when I checked, it must have been very close to 3:33. I remember there was threes on the clock because I had the digital clock projected on the ceiling, and but the thing was, there was no vibration, there was no sound, there was no nothing. I just knew that I'd woken up and I was in a very relaxed state. And then I thought, okay, stand in front of the bathroom mirror, and boom, I was in front of the bathroom mirror just like that. So I think, but there was no real, that sort of vibrations going on. But I think for a lot of people, when they do feel those, that is, I think, just the brain's way of saying to us something is going on, like something is happening. There's some sort of separation occurring, and it's like a kind of a signal for our brain to try to comprehend what's happening. But it's exciting because that if that ever happened to me, I'd be like, yes, I know I can get out of my body right now. I just have to like focus and I can get out. Yeah, but it's been elusive for me, that's for sure.
It's
I
not an
wanted to
easy
ask you
one to
about.
achieve.
Yeah, go on, go on.
No, I was saying it definitely is not an easy one to achieve. Like OB, I've found being able to be conscious that your body is asleep, but being able to get out of the body at the same time consciously. Yeah, I've
Mm.
never been able to consciously manifest it so far.
Yeah, yeah. I so admire people that I know. There's loads of people that do it. Like there's the I think the Reddit group to do with OBEs is very very large number of people that talk about their OBEs, and I've always admired people that can just do that. I know it takes practice. Darius J. Wright's a good example. One of my other guests, Rick Pyle, who's been having OBEs since he was an infant, and he doesn't. It's just like it's like getting up and walking out the door and making yourself a cup of coffee. For people like that, it's such a practiced experience now. I think, oh, that'd be so good to be able to do that. I wanted to actually ask you about books, because I see you've got a lot of books there. I know you've got your own books. So is there anything that you're reading at the moment which you're finding particularly fascinating?
Not at the minute. I listen to a lot of channels, and I like to listen to channels who have been humans before. So
Mm-hmm.
there's one in particular whose name is Tabash, channeled by Blair Styra in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one whose name is Adamus Saint-Germain, channeled
Oh,
by
yes.
Geoffrey Opie.
I've got the book for that one, actually. What's his
So
name? It's Jeffrey Hop.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure Jeffrey Hop, yeah.
yeah, I've got one of the books is 20 stories from a master or something like that. Quite
Okay.
interesting. But what you
Yeah.
see there behind me are just like kitchen cooking books.
That's the one I
So
was thinking of. Yeah.
Live Your
Yeah.
Divinity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Um,
but
how
otherwise, when it
about
comes to books,
Bashar?
so interestingly, I was ignoring Bashar and Cryon for a long while because they've never been human. And there's just like more something that resonates more with me with people who've been through the human journey.
Yep.
But I've started to listen to Bashar actually over the past few weeks, and I find it fascinating the way he explains everything, particularly around his own civilization, if you like. Because everything around aliens has always fascinated me when I was quite young, less so as an adult. Although, I mean, it's a separate conversation, but I could tell you, like in a few minutes, I once saw a UFO as well, so that was a strange experience in my life that I still cannot explain. But yeah, as far as books are concerned, there's always one that I go to, that is Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. That's
Oh, yes. Yeah.
a 3-part series of books that were written in
Mm.
like in the mid to late 90s. Book one is still relevant. You read the first, 50 pages of book one, everything about life is explained, and you can read it again and again and again, and every time you find a new snippet of information you missed before. And I remember that at the end of the book it says like you will read that book multiple times in your life, and every time it will be like reading a new book. It feels like this to me. Quite an interesting book.
I'm glad you reminded me of that one, because it's one of the very first books of that sort of type that I bought, and it was in hardcover. And most of the books I've got are on Kindle, so I know I've got it on my bookshelf, but I haven't read it. It's probably at least 5 years ago that I first read it. But like you, I went through there was three. I think it was 3 volumes. I went through, and at the same time there was after that one I then read Tom Campbell's big My Big Toe, which is My Big Theory of Everything, and he's got 3 books in that. That's a trilogy as well. I went through. It was like took me about 6 months to get through all of them. Now we've got a question here. Actually, not so much a question. Raven0277 has pulled over. Good. That's glad that you've done that. I've had 2 dreams where it feels like I'm watching a movie. People who are unfamiliar to me, but when I wake up, I have an immediate feeling I was that person in my dream. Yeah, and past life.
Could be.
Yeah, could be. Seems like it could be. I guess it's all to do with feeling, isn't it? Like if it feels like something, then it probably is. There's a lot more of how things feel in not in our physical reality, and we're not used to that here. We have our senses, our feeling and emotional senses really get closed down a lot here, and then they're much more open over there, which I find is challenging to try to sort of figure out intellectually what's going on.
I've been lucky enough that I've had different types of dreams, but I've got dreams that I call like continuous dreams. So, for example, I could have a dream and I'm in a specific location, I'm leading a specific life. I've got kids, I've got a different wife, I've got a job. Like I'm literally seeing myself getting out of the house, taking the car, commuting to my, the workplace or the office. But then those dreams, like maybe 3 weeks later, I would have the continuity of that dream. And another 3 weeks later, another piece of that dream. And I call them parallel lives for me because I think they look like very parallel. But I know people who have dreams and they could relate to past lives. Someone told me once it was a really strange dream that they actually were a hitman. They said like basically true. I was in a train and I had like a little suitcase in which was a gun, and I knew exactly who my target was, and I was very unemotional about the job I was doing, and I could feel all the sensation. So she didn't see the killing taking place, but she felt like she just accepted a mission. She was a man, so that's a woman dreaming she was a man, and she said like it has to be a past life or something because the connection was actually very strong and felt very real. What does it bring exactly to the current life? Well, that's for everyone to figure out, I would say. Yeah, definitely there could be snippets of those, especially as that person was saying, if it feels very familiar. To me, at least to my understanding, there's a high chance that it could be like what we label as a past life because everything's happening at once, so there's no real past or future, really. But it's, as you say, our brain has to, or our logic has to interpret it some way that can fit the human brain.
Yep. All right, so I'm conscious of the fact that it's very late for you, Vincent.
Don't
I
worry,
appreciate
it's fine.
you coming on to the live stream. Now, if anyone does have any questions for Vincent, then drop them into the chat. But I think those who are here have probably got what they wanted. There's just tell us about your book for those of you who don't know already about your book, Vincent, and then we'll start to wrap it up.
Yeah, so it's the novel just behind me, The Man Who Kept Dying, and it's a novel I wrote following my near-death experience because as my NDE was quite short, I imagined what it would be like if I'd actually met the beings that were waiting for me within the light, and the journey they could have taken me through. So it follows the journey of someone who actually passes to the other side and then rediscovers life from the other side, and then that person has to make a decision as to whether they decide to continue with their life or stay on the other side. So I've included a lot of chapters about events that have happened in my own life, try to shift the perspective as well if the event could be seen from another human or object sometimes perspective. So it's a personal sort of almost message or legacy that I wanted to do, and I also always had the belief that one day I would be writing a book inspired by events from my own life. I just thought that it would happen much later in life when I would have a lot of stories to tell, but it turned out even before 40 I had enough stories to tell to write a novel. It's available on Amazon if you go to either my YouTube channel or you can find me on Instagram. There's a link, or you just look it up on Amazon, and you can have it here in a print or in digital format as well. And if you enjoy it,
we'll have that in the show notes. Sorry.
I would say, yeah, if you read it and if you enjoy it, just always leave a comment, because it's always nice to know how people found the story or think they would have changed or questions they may have once they've read it.
Yeah, we'll leave in the show notes for the live stream. There's a link to your channel. So this is a To answer your question, Ravon0277, yes, Vincent does have a YouTube channel. It's at The Man Who Kept Dying. When I drop your question out, you can see on Vincent's little title there, but I'll put a link to that in the show notes anyway, so you can see that. So go along and check that out. I think your channel is only fairly new. When did you start?
I started in April, just as I launched the book. I wanted to explain some of the concepts that I highlight in the book more in depth by using the channel. So the channel will talk about many different concepts, such as time, reincarnation, lucid dreams is one of them, but also what happens after we die, spirit guides, aliens, UFOs, and many other topics. So you can just go have a look and watch some of the videos, or all of them, if you'll enjoy them.
All right, great. Well, it's been really great having you back on the channel for this live stream. I appreciate you being here and the fact that it was so late over there.
Don't worry, it's fine.
Good luck with your presentation that you've got to do tomorrow, and might have a conversation again in a little time, perhaps next year.
No problem. Thank you again for having me for a follow-up after the interview, and to everyone listening, thank you for being around as well.
Yeah, and thanks also to everyone for listening. I forgot to mention, we reached 5,000 subscribers on the channel since the last live stream, so I really appreciate everyone's support. It's been an absolute hoot doing this. So, yeah, and obviously we wouldn't be able to do that without people following and watching the videos and supporting the channel. So thanks everyone for that as well. I'm going to finish it up there. I'll talk to you all next week, and we'll just wrap up in a sec, Vincent.
No problem. Thank you.